ridiculous. What are you using? WordPress?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my jam.
I decided after years of doing it different ways to just do something I knew how to do and taught myself how to use WordPress.
That's what I did too. I built like 6 websites, and then I finally went to WordPress. I was like, Jesus Christ, why didn't I just do this at the beginning? Spend $30 to get a good frame. Stop this free shit. Like, just do $30. People build great stuff.
Like, I bought a theme for WordPress, and then they stop supporting the theme, and then it's like certain things start to break over time. Like that first thing's supposed to be a slider, and it has like all the things in that top featured post box, and it's supposed to scroll on its own, and it's supposed to have words in front of it. And at one point, it stopped scrolling, then it stopped putting the words up. So then I just started photoshopping and saying, I'm going to just stamp it with a title and put it in there. But if you don't know how to do that for yourself, then it's easy enough to learn these days.
But yeah, and also like there's like a Wikipedia where it goes through so many different parts of WordPress. So just like do this, do this. And I learned a little bit of programming. It's good.
I think once you learn how to, if you're looking for something, how to read the instructions for it.
Yeah, good.
There's been other smart people here. Sometimes they write down how they do it, and then you find that useful.
Well, a lot of video editing, I just watch him, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. That's cool. So.
All right, so you're steering a mouse. Take us to something interesting you've seen this week. Any interesting news stories? Anything going on in the world?
Florida libertarian sacrificing goats.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Good man. All right.
Show me.
Dude, give me the keyboard too.
There you go. See? Now.
This is a great story.
All right.
This guy's so metal.
Okay, so just type in. Oh my God! There's no way in fuck I can see that, but let me see if I can still pull this up.
That's why typing competency is one of those skills of life. How good are you at spelling?
Sacrifice. No, I can spell fine. Okay, fuck this. Okay.
His name's Augustus.
Invictus. That's his fucking name.
Now, what's cool is everything on that screen I'm capturing, so we get to cut that in with this footage. So as you go to stuff on the screen, you just zoomed in.
So you guys don't mind that I'm zooming the fuck in, right?
No,
so
I'm sure people at home are like, that's fucking easier to read, dude.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah, my vision is pretty sharp.
He's like innovating as he's just doing.
Well, because look, now it looks like a mobile. If you look over there on that screen, now they can read it.
A Vice article.
Yeah. So meet Augustus Invictus, a Florida libertarian who loves paganism, civil war, and goat sacrifice. Look at that asshole. Look at that asshole.
He's got a sweater.
He stole Mr. Rogers' wardrobe.
But he sacrificed a goat while doing it.
It's like Mr. Rogers with swagger.
So, anyone want to read that?
Yeah, sure, I'll read it. Last week, the chairman of Florida's Libertarian Party, Adrian Wiley, resigned from his post, citing his outrage that the party's executive committee refused to tell Augustus Invictus, the only libertarian candidate running for Marco Rubio's Florida U.S. Senate seat, that he couldn't be a libertarian anymore. There are a few reasons why Wiley finds Invictus such a distasteful character. Quote, Mr. Invictus has repeatedly vowed that it is his destiny to start a second civil war in America, unquote. Wiley wrote in a Facebook post announcing his resignation.
Can we stop here real quick?
Yeah.
That tells us a lot about the Libertarian Party, that the way they write their fucking resignation paper is on Facebook.
Yeah.
Like, how disorganized and worthless are you to where, like, oh, I don't have anyone working with me and anything else. No, I'll just tweet it.
Does anyone have a piece of paper?
A Facebook post.
Does anyone have paper? Okay, great. Does anyone have a pen?
No pen? Damn it. I'll have to do it on my...
Or maybe he typed it.
And he's probably using like an iPhone 3, like a 3GS, like an old iPhone, like where you can kind of do this with it.
I actually met him.
In his defense, he probably typed it and then realized he didn't have a printer.
Oh, there we go.
So I haven't owned a printer since 2006.
So I'll follow up here.
Goes around here.
He continued, quote, he has described himself as an American fascist. He has expressed support for eugenics program. This is right up all of our alleys here. Many of his supporters are known members of neo-Nazi and white supremacist groups, unquote. Well, the Florida Libertarian Party didn't out and out reject Invictus, the coolest name ever, from its ranks. It did issue a press release Monday condemning the Senate candidate's views. Quote, the LPF has not endorsed Augustus Invictus and has not provided him with any support, unquote. The party's new chair said in the statement. But the party added, under the law, we cannot prevent him from running as a libertarian, and he's not required to enter our, certification process. So, anyone else want to go off a little bit on this?
So this is fun because I think the best part about it is I've met the Adrian Wiley guy before, and I know some libertarians in South Florida who know this other guy, Augustus Invictus, and
As you
So
do.
the point of this is Adrian Wiley is being like, oh, this other libertarian is such a terrible libertarian. He's like, he did this goat sacrifice and he's just this awful guy. Augustus Invictus just totally owns the goat sacrifice, though. So the media goes to him and is like, oh, what's the deal with the goat sacrifice? He's like, yeah, I sacrificed a goat and drank its blood. The most metal thing ever.
Now, you
I
see,
can't even be mad. I love that he copped it, and that's the most Florida and libertarian thing ever.
Definitely Florida.
definitely Florida. Now, I wouldn't have as much of an issue if it wasn't for like the eugenics and Second Civil War stuff. Even Second Civil War, I'm like, oh, libertarians,
That's a
Alex
bit
Jones,
hairy.
it's kind of that
It's not
crowd.
so metal.
But the eugenics thing kind of just adding into that. And apparently what had occurred was that the main paper he wrote while in law school was a justification for eugenics within the United States.
Well, wait a minute. Positive eugenics? Get a nice breeding program going?
Wait. I thought positive eugenics means that that is the sterilization thing, or is that...
I might have actually... Well, positive
I
eugenics...
thought negative eugenics was like selective pressure through evolution.
I don't even know if negative eugenics isn't a retronym that I made up as a counter.
I'm sure we can Google this.
Yeah.
Let's go to the
Yeah,
keyboard.
I don't know if negative eugenics is a term or not. Like,
God, oh wait, shit.
Hey, wait, before you spin the wheel. My understanding was positive eugenics is that which they were doing to themselves among the upper classes to kind of interbreed with other successful families. And negative eugenics is what they were doing to other people through social welfare and all this other
interesting.
stuff.
Because I would say...
Sounds about right.
Because people who were for eugenics were for both, because they were doing one to them as selective breeding like farmers would do, and they were doing another to the population to sterilize lower IQs and shit.
So my distinction
be
would be...
wrong.
No,
And
well,
this
we
is where
both could be.
we're
This is
gonna-
where Carlos comes in
Yeah.
a second.
Oh, nice.
I would have said
Where are we looking at here?
negative is killing, positive is breeding.
Can you see this?
what it
Can you
kinda
see
looks
this
like
up here? Because I can't see that. My
The
vision.
distinction between positive and negative
Well,
eugenics.
no,
We'll be able to see them.
No, I can read this. I'm talking about
Oh.
where the actual website is.
I'll volunteer as the URL
Yeah,
reader.
get up on the URL.
eugenicsarchive.ca/database.
They seem to know what the hell they're doing.
All right, but it's Canada. All right.
All right. The distinction between positive and negative eugenics is perhaps the best known. By the way, am I speaking clearly enough for
Yeah,
everyone here?
yeah.
The best known distinction that has been made between forms that eugenics takes. Roughly, positive eugenics refers to efforts aimed at increasing desirable traits, while negative eugenics refers to efforts aimed at decreasing undesirable traits. Oh, I was totally off on this. Still, it is easy to fall into confusion in drawing and deploying the distinction in particular contexts. Clarity here is important. Okay, yeah. Grammar,
So scroll
obviously.
down and go to that basic distinction.
The basic idea between the distinction is relatively easy to convey. Eugenics aims to use science for human improvement over generations by changing the composition of human populations. It does so by favoring the reproduction of certain sorts or kinds of people over others.
The propaidutic function. Wasn't that what Gatto called it?
What, from Alexander Inglis's...
Yeah, where he was talking about one of the things that school teachers were taught to do is basically get the people who were like meant to be tomorrow's leaders and get them over here hanging out with each other, and then get those other people who are meant to be the workers and hang out over here. Identify the functions and train people
Yeah, it would
accordingly.
be helpful to actually read it from Inglis's book, which is called Principles of Secondary Education, where it seems... to be fair
it's more
to this
nebulous than
19
the succinct statement in the interview. But I got the book, and in future episodes, we run upstairs and get the book and stuff like that.
When you read it yourself, it seems like when you just read those pages, it seems a little bit more benign than maybe how I've described it or how God has
But you got to
described
take it in
it.
context of who is Inglis and for what type of establishment commentary was he writing and who funded his research and stuff like that.
Yeah,
'Cause
absolutely.
It keeps going back to, an interlacing of people wanting to rule over other people.
And he himself could have basically just been a worker.
Yeah. Well, I think
like-
he was. I don't think
yeah.
he's a mastermind.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. There's a lot of workers out there.
Absolutely.
That favoring could take the form of facilitating the reproduction of some, those with desirable traits, or it could take the form of inhibiting the reproduction of others, those with undesirable traits. The first of these is positive eugenics. The second is negative eugenics. Someone else read.
Historically, positive eugenic measures have included promoting the ideas that healthy, high-achieving people should have children or have larger families, introducing institutions and policies that encourage marriage and family life for such people, and establishing sperm banks where eugenically desirable traits, such as intelligence, are criterial either for donors or are listed as present in the donor for users to consider in their choices. Negative eugenic measures have included immigration restriction based on putatively eugenical Desirable traits, including race, nationality, and ethnicity, discouragement or prohibition of marriage and family life for those with eugenically undesirable traits, and sexual segregation, sterilization, and euthanasia of those with such traits.
All right,
Which
I
is
think we
why
got
people
this.
needed to get marriage licenses
Yep.
because they
Yes.
just said right there, if you're under these criteria, which is kind of outside of their social structure, they're like, oh, we're gonna frown on that. And then inside their social structure, they got Yale sperm bank type things going, where they
Well,
find intelligent people and collect the shit.
Yeah, I mean, for a long period of time there, the entire point of marriage licenses was to prevent miscegenation,
Yeah.
the bonding of races. And throughout the entire South, I mean, law enforcement would go out there and separate families. Because, well, actually, that marriage wasn't valid. And because of the miscegenation, we're a little bit worried about the IQ or the development of your child, so we're going to have to remove. I mean, geez, the entire social worker mentality and thought process within the United States was founded in the eugenics movement. But man, when you say that stuff out loud to normal people, you get a little weird.
And what would be the recourse? Like they'd take the children
Take the kids.
and do what with them?
Anywhere from foster homes to public schools, setting them up with other families, like all white families. For
Someone in the
instance.
audience just said, "Stop fucking with your pet."
Oh, sorry, Tom.
Just kidding.
So yeah, they would actually forcibly stick them in places like foster homes, or they would stick them with sterile white families. So if
That sounds like a sitcom right there.
sterile white families, sterile white families, Tom and Katie. So because that's what the most whitest name I could think of off the top of my head. But so they would actually set them up with white families who couldn't have kids.
So they would try to be good stewards of these interracial,
Absolutely. I mean, you saw this
accidental children.
Yeah, I mean, if you take a look at what happened with the Aboriginals with the British, I mean, they were taking
Canada.
Aboriginal kids all the time. That happened
In Australia and all the
Australia as well, and
territories.
Tasmania was way messed up when it came to Australia.
A lot
And
of
they
people
just
don't
separated
realize
families.
Tasmania had that happen.
It was fascinating too because it was on a flight to Australia where I was just like, my girlfriend at the time was like asleep, and I was just talking to this girl. She left public school as a teacher, and she was like, "Yeah, it just seems a little indoctrinated to me." And she's like, "Do you know what happened to Tasmania?" No, I don't. And she's telling me about the eugenics plan within those areas in the early 1900s, that all the way up until like the 1990s, just separated families in order to make them more accustomed to American culture. I mean, and it's interesting too because anti-immigration people are kind of fighting for that mentality.
Please.
Well, didn't they also
just
do
do
that
it.
with indigenous people here?
Yeah, the Native American populations. That was, as both of you know, I mean, a lot of public education schools was that, and it was so bad when it came to separating these families that they had to set up the Indian Child Welfare Act within the United States because there was this huge influx of Native American kids being taken out of these homes and put in place in the white homes. So they set up the Indian Child Welfare Act. So I was working for Child Protective Services. I had this form, right, and they had a series of questions. The most important question to ask was, "Are you a Native American?" Because then I can't jack your kids. It became incredibly difficult because the way the Indian Child Welfare Act was stated was, if you're within a reservation, you have to place the kid with another person who's part of that tribe. That was supposed to make sense a while back. There's been some screwy stuff that's occurred with it, mainly because a lot of what we consider tribes within the United States are artificial constructs by the United States government.
Or yeah, like they were either split apart kind of arbitrarily or even blended together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then if you also look at the sterilization within the United States, I mean, you have these artificial tribes being created by the state, where they just move these places with infertile land, or places where they can't grow any food. Then they string them on things like food stamps, right?
The funniest, but this is
Go
a
ahead.
tangent within a tangent. The funniest one is the Sioux. There's a tribe of Indian called the Sioux. And the story was, I forget whether it was the French or the British, but they allied themselves with the Lakota.
Yeah.
And which was, they called themselves the Lakota because it meant we're friends.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was their word. And they said, who are those people? And they said, they're the Sioux. That means enemy. And then the tribe became known as that.
the enemy.
Yeah.
That's really funny. So they set them up in a bunch of infertile land and stuck them in things like food stamps. You actually saw this, by the way, and that's a side tangent, but I want to go to the Puerto Rico thing because we're seeing the results of that now.
Yeah.
Where they're calling them all lazy. But they set up these basically concentration camps for Native Americans where they also weren't allowed to trade outside of the camp. So you couldn't create markets where you were able to trade with white people. That screws up. You basically end up with like a little dictatorship, a little North Korea, because all the money that is coming in is also funneled through the tribal leaders. You'd have social workers up until the 70s would go into these places and say, well, this seems like an odd arrangement. It's outside the nuclear family. You have the grandma there. Maybe there's 2 or 3 dads, right? So it's not exactly normal monogamy. A statement
Sitcom. My two or three dads.
My 2 or 3 dads. Yeah.
So they would set it up where they would actually tell these people, if you do not get fixed, we will no longer give you food.
Right.
Because you're having too many children, and they didn't want them to keep going. So you had a lot of sterilization in these homes, and then obviously the picking apart of all these different families. And then what is people like Donald Trump or these other folks who are calling these immigrants lazy? Well, if you completely destroy an economy and make them have to live off of welfare, what the hell do you think happens to these people? It becomes part of the culture to where you always have to be begging because you never knew another way of life.
Mm-hmm.
And then they say it's genetic.
Well, then there's also this interesting term, this thing that has to be reconciled. That's interesting. Like, there's all these efforts to reduce unfavorable breeding, in the minds of the zookeepers of society, or the people who see themselves as that. Maybe not call
That was
themselves
going on in the Karate Kid. That chick that Daniel was trying to get with, her dad took her to the dance and wanted to Cobra Kai, because they're from the same class structure.
Yeah.
I'm sure Danny was the dick in that movie, though. We can go into this later.
But he was like
The only
it's
cool
an ex-
person in
it's
the
a-
movie
it's a
was
pho-
Miyagi. That's what I know.
Word.
Miyagi was
Miyagi was the only cool guy in that whole movie.
he's fucking smart, man.
Word.
He had the experience and knew how to get like
And he
free
knew
labor.
woo-woo. He could
He's
do
like,
this,
I'll
and he heals your knee.
He's free market. He wasn't like, I will do it for money. He's like, yeah, I got some cars and a house and this and sand and floor
It's
and paint the
agorism.
fence. Agorism, there you go.
Very agorist.
Agorism and the Karate Kid. There's a whole podcast episode for your series.
That needs to happen.
It's going to be tied to MK Ultra and MI6.
Hopefully.
Personal protection.
No, so what was my point? No, this interesting
Did you know the
turnaround.
director of Karate Kid, by the way, was part of the Bavarian Illuminati.
Who
I'm not sure
was?
if you knew that. The director of Karate Kid. I don't know if you knew that. Yeah, I can make the
What's your
connection.
evidence on that? What do you got?
I have the brain. I'm just going to
Oh,
say
my
it's
goodness.
there, and it's on the
You got a
brain.
brain. You better use it then. How do you explain that?
So, anyway, back to serious things.
Okay, I think we're a couple degrees of separation away from
No,
serious
you
things.
thought-
Meanwhile, Augustus is like, "Hey, what about me? I'm the one who killed the goat." I hope
I feel like he hasn't got enough attention for that.
I-
Like goat killing.
I actually hope
Take some balls.
are there clips of him talking? I hope so, and I hope he
I'm
has
sure
like a
we'll
real
find some
distinguished, aristocratic Southern Leonardo DiCaprio and Django Unchained.
That's how
kind
I
of
kind of
accent.
picture it too.
That's a,
yeah.
So just so I can edit this later, we're jumping back to the eugenics thing. I was talking about Native Americans and everything else.
Oh yeah,
So-
so back to step forward to where we just were.
Yeah.
I was saying there's this reconciliation that needs to happen between all of these efforts to decrease what was seen as unfavorable breeding with the biggest incentive program developing in the late 1960s for the same kind of breeding to take place more rapidly.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
It's where the genetics argument gets really confusing for me and convoluted because genetics, IQ, race, all these things have a lot of tied together, but it's hard to figure out exactly where the cultural parameters are that are making this happen,
Yeah.
and how quickly those things can shift. So if you look at, for instance, immigrant populations within the United States, there was a really interesting study done where they looked at the IQ of Mexicans who came to the United States.
Mhm.
By the next generation, they were smarter, anywhere from like 5 to 10 points difference. By the third generation, they were back to almost where they were at in the first place. And so they're trying to figure out exactly how that all worked together.
Okay, but when were what I would want to know, the question that I would have is, when did that study take place? Was it replicated with other groups?
It was a 10 to 15 year study.
Okay.
God, I'm trying to remember.
Because I think like when
Does
it
it work?
takes place
You know what I
might be
find
the thing
good
that
for
matters.
memory?
Was
That
it
Google
Cato?
thing. Go ahead.
God damn it.
Type
All
it
right.
in there. See what you got.
Yeah, this is actually okay. Immigration
Teach us something.
population.
Talk about something of substance. This is the deep
IQ.
end, man.
Actually, he was just interviewing Stephen Mullins, so I can get the name really quickly,
Oh yeah.
and then I can immediately find the
Let's see.
Jason Richwine.
Okay.
Perfect. All right, Jason Richwine.
I guess for this show we're using Yahoo. I gotta fix my browser. I wanna be using
Christ, what are we
Starpage.
doing?
Well, I never use this browser
Yeah.
for searches.
Okay, we're not going to Slate. We're not going to Huffington Post. The Occidental Observer. Maybe I can use it, but I know I want the actual thing. Damn it. Because I'm never going to go to Slater for a show like this.
No.
Why would you not go to Slate? Let's talk about that for a second.
Because it's part of the progressive agenda. They allow pedophiles on their write articles for them stating that they're not pedophiles when it's known proof, and then they try to justify
There was that.
pederasty.
That was that
There
recent
was
article.
that one.
I saw
They're
Paul
fucking
Joseph
creeps.
Watson had made some comments about it. I didn't check
Yeah.
into it. So what's the nature of it?
It's-
They're
But-
defending it, or they're like,
Well,
kids don't have rights? What's their angle?
Oh well, no. So
No.
It's
there's
a disease.
like
It's a mental illness. That's what they'd say.
I can make their defense
Well-
and the counter to it, and like we had a conversation
We
about
did
this.
have
That was
a
one of the first conversations we kind of had because it was
Yeah.
a dark conversation.
Maybe we should move back to immigration.
Let's go back to immigration. We can talk about pedophilia later.
I
All
got
right, let's get back to the Mexicans. Tacos. All right.
I got an article I remember that I mentioned when we were talking on Skype when we had a similar conversation a couple weeks ago that I saw on USA Today. Remember I said that? So it's Alan Gomez, and then the keywords would be immigrants and welfare. And he was saying that most of the immigrants that are coming in and doing stuff like that are from Asia.
Yeah.
It seemed like
Wait, what? God damn it.
type it in.
Most of the immigrants.
Let's
what?
fucking. I want to get to
All right,
this
nail
thing.
it down. Let's
Now here's the problem: is every single fucking thing that comes up. Thank you, Yahoo. Is a liberal report about how racist these people are, and I don't buy that. Like I don't fucking care. Look at this. It's all I'm getting out of Yahoo. I need to go to whitesupremacist.com so I can find the truth. All right.
Google.
Brian Salford's yelling at me right now. Why are you using Google? You're not a libertarian. All right.
Why doesn't Star Page have the same quality?
Why can I not find the actual? Where do I go?
This is an interesting exercise in itself.
This
We're
is the
learning
thing.
right now.
well, what is the agenda here?
This is the part
Every
where people
fucking
get
thing is
confused,
liberal.
and then they quit looking. This is the
No,
this is the
Heritage
research hump,
Institute
I call
made it, and I type in Heritage Institute, and I'm still getting fucking Washington Post and a bunch of other bullshit news media that is owned by certain people.
Now, this could have positive benefits too.
What? What's the positive benefit?
The way it's returning the search results. I was having this conversation. I interviewed somebody from theantimedia.org.
Where's this dissertation?
And
What's the dissertation?
Is it up a little? Go up above Michelle Malkin?
Oh yeah, we're not going to Michelle
above
Malkin because
again.
Not going to Huffington Post.
Oh no, it was a Huffington Post. Never mind. Did they?
wait, maybe if I just go to Wikipedia and type in Jason Richwine, I'll be able to get it.
Because we're looking for the actual study.
Yeah, that's
not a
all I
bunch of
care
people
about.
Who reported some words about it?
And a bunch
Yeah.
of people, by the way, who I know for a fact don't know how to read studies, because I mean,
Because they work at the HuffPo,
I would like to talk
Or-
about. We can have a conversation regarding RT News,
Slate.
just about journalism as a whole, and my dealing with that. I was blown away with how
Yeah.
unbelievably reckless journalists are.
Now you're making this show easy to watch on smartphones. You can see the words and everything now.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so can I. So wait, I typed in Jason. Wait, so I typed in Jason Richwine and the Heritage Foundation came
It's
up.
redirected.
This is creepy. Okay. Let me type in Jason.
All right.
Co-author of the think tank's controversial report on the cost of amnesty. China's position following the intensive media of a Harvard PhD thesis.
Should be able to follow one of those sources in my team.
Lower IQ. What do you guys see there? Washington Examiner?
Amnesty study author
That's
Jason
Examiner.
Ridgewine resigns.
Yeah.
That's the Washington Examiner. What's
What's the next
23?
one?
So the source is two other
ABC
news
News.
reports.
Yeah.
See, this is.
I
I don't know, man. Does everyone know how to use footnotes? I think everyone in this room does.
Yeah.
But most people never click over those little numbers and see.
Yeah.
Or they're also at the bottom of the page. You
Those
can go down
numbers
and
are great.
actually.
Yeah.
Because that's where the real information starts to
Right.
become apparent.
All this says is this was criticized by something, but it's not even telling me what it fucking said. So-
Maybe they don't want you to know. Do you think that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Doesn't it seem very vanilla?
This
where it
is-
could be specific?
Yeah.
Interesting. Noticing a lot of that in our culture.
No, like
I don't
every.
know who that
this,
serves, but
This
it
is
doesn't
the most.
help me.
Dude, have you ever went to the Wikipedia global warming article?
No.
It is very obviously orchestrated.
For instance,
Anyway.
do you remember the book I showed you last night?
Yeah.
David de Rothschild?
Mhm.
Can you explain to Brett what you said about like its form and format? Like who is it? What's
Oh,
what's that a tool
Urban
for?
Outfitters. Like it's for teenagers, for college students. When I worked at Urban Outfitters for a little while, there's all these different books regarding environmentalism or recycling or how to be hip or how to have sex right. Like it was all mixed together in this like kind of thing, like that Kick-Ass Kitchen book or whatever, Gangster
The
Kitchen.
kitchen.
Yeah, Thug Kitchen. Like it was all kind of put together, and you can see that all of these books are very set up in a certain way to create that clickbait in your mind, just in that paper thing. Because there's not a lot of actual information. It's just scare tactics plus like how to wear a sweater right. And what was the name of the book again? And that's actually in the book, by the way.
It's
How to wear a sweater right.
The Global Warming Handbook, and on the cover there's a polar bear on a life preserver, as if polar bears are in danger of drowning. And they can swim like 200 miles.
Right.
They're all good, man. Like, and not only that, but it's a valid point that I've heard made on another podcast that those are like 800-pound monsters, and if you
To
saw
be fair,
one,
they're very
you would
vicious.
want to fucking kill it.
They're carnivores. They're the only bear that's a
will
pure
attack you.
carnivore. They'll fucking eat you.
Yeah,
fucking
they'll,
shame.
chase you. They'll chase you
They're
and
like
eat you.
sharks, but on land.
By the way, do you
They're
know
also attracted to menstrual blood, so
yeah. Do you know when they
watch
jank
out.
people the most? When they're taking a shit. Like they get people while they're using the restroom. Like
Jesus.
they go in there and they
Fucking
eat
stalkers,
you while
man.
you're pooping. Disrespectful.
That's no.
Have a little
They
test.
That's
should
the
die
worst
off anyway.
way to
I'm
go.
okay with this global warming thing.
Yeah, just fucking
Fuck
kill them
the
all.
polar bears.
Yeah, fuck polar bears. I want to go to Iceland when it's warm. Like, let's take
I think they just
Yeah.
had a polar bear that showed up in Iceland, and they were making a big deal about it. Like he got stuck on a iceberg and got.
Sounds like a
Trying
good
to kill
time.
people.
It's called
Well,
traveling.
I guess if you're, if
Was
you're
it
a
legal
polar
immigrant
bear
now? Is that...
and you're stoned and you end up on the iceberg and you're 200 miles away and you forgot to get off, that's one thing. But motherfuckers can swim. I don't buy this. He got stuck on the piece of ice that broke off because that's like a sad human story. You picture like a little kid being separated from the parents. It's like, wait a minute, things can fucking swim. They're fucking vicious killers. They kill seals all the time. They don't wait for the shit to come up out. You know.
So you think that the purpose of this book is somebody at the very least picks it up in line? Because the way the book is organized is like things you can do, like a list
Feel
of
sorry for a polar
No,
bear.
they're
Read
gonna
this
they're gonna
book.
price it perfectly. It's gonna be $12.75.
$12.75.
No, that is the like there's zones of pricing.
But
Yeah.
these books are near the line, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so look at the way the book is organized. It's a list of things.
It's a
So
comic
some
book.
stupid asshole who's in line at Urban Outfitters, and you know there is one right now in every Urban Outfitters all over the fucking country. They
Half of
open
them
the
are
book
employees.
and they say, "Oh, on one page you get a complete idea." Of what you can do, right? So then, I don't know how old that book. Do you know the copyright off the top of your
It's
head, Rich?
circa 2010-ish.
Okay, so then like
David de Rothschild.
Sheryl Crow is reading it. She's like, "Oh, one square of toilet paper. I should
Yeah.
use one." Oh, I know. And she puts the book back,
Yeah.
pays for her shit, and goes,
Yeah.
"Did you know? Oh, I'm
Yeah.
actually going to
Yeah.
tell other people about this. Did
Yeah.
you know if you use one
Gonna
square
tweet
of
it
toilet
out.
paper?"
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how that shit catches on.
That's what
Because I
happens
think
when
it's
I read
people who
Ghost
want to
Book, 'cause you don't eat
pontificate, and we might know some people who do this too, right? Who they want to pontificate
I
about
don't
some.
like
You don't know people like this? I swear, I've seen
sure.
these kinds of people at the events.
Oh, you got it.
All right. Oh, here it is. Thank you,
Yeah, I'll put it in front of
Lisa.
this one here.
Global
beautiful.
Warming Survival Handbook. And what I mean,
David de Rothschild, 77 essential skills
By
to
the way-
stop
Look at
climate
how pretty
change
it is.
or
Oh.
live through it. Look,
somebody threw a bottle in the water too. It's gonna pop
Can
the
I add in one more thing in the marketing?
Yeah.
What was really popular around 2008 to 2010? Zombie books about survival. So he's asking the survival part on top of that.
All right.
He's just taking every advantage.
brilliant.
77
Yeah.
essential skills. Now, I think it's also, this could be me kind of reading into it, but I think it's creating this fear that the bottle might break and pop the polar bear's raft. Right? So you see how this could even
He looks like a lazy
escalate
polar bear too. He's not even like paddling or nothing. He's just chilling.
more out of control. But every page is is like a self-contained idea on every page.
Wait. I got another connection. Coca-Cola bottle, polar bears.
Oh,
Gods must be crazy.
that was
No,
not polar bear.
no,
I
the
said
polar bear
that.
advertisements.
The only
For
reason-
like Coke, 20 years.
The only
is
reason
Coca-Cola
people-
with polar bears.
The only reason people think polar bears are cute or cuddly or have any
Coca-Cola.
affinity toward them is the
Fucking
polar bear.
Coca-Cola.
I think we need to
Coca-Cola,
stop polar
Christmas.
bears from littering Coca-Cola
And they're
bottles
sharing the
that they're
bottles.
taking.
We'd
Yeah.
probably
They're
get
dicks.
we'd get flagged for copyright if
They
we play that shit
eat
during the
people
Oh,
when they're
absolutely, we'll be
shitting,
done.
and they
Yeah.
litter their
I'd be
Coke
murdered
bottles
immediately.
everywhere.
We stop where we lose the YouTube channel. That's how far this show goes.
So
But
no.
I also got Vimeo. I got Vimeo in the back pocket. Let's maybe use that.
So no, but the what is it called? What is the term? Personification of animals?
Yeah.
Anthropomorphization.
Yeah,
It's
no,
one of the
that's
worst things you can do for children.
It's the worst because lions will fucking eat you, and bears, by the way, eat kids. They eat little. They eat cubs all the time. Like the male bears will come out of hibernation and go, "Fuck, I'm hungry. I'm gonna go eat some babies." If you eat your babies, I don't care if you die.
Well, you got a lot of
Like, you're the worst.
suburbia that is encroached on the woods. And what was I watching the other day?
I had a bear eating my fucking trash in Asheville. Like
It
he
was-
just came out. Black
It was
bears
some
eat their
recent
trash.
episode of Rogan podcast, and the first thing that they see, he's like, I saw something today I haven't seen. And he's like, I saw a fucking cougar on top of a telephone pole, and these kids had scared the cougar up the pole. Now think of how else that could have gone. Cougar could have been like,
Yeah.
oh, he's scared of you, wow, you know. But it's like there was mountain lions in the parking lot here of a local Olive Garden, like a local plaza, where they have those corporate things over there.
Mm-hmm.
And we had so much snow that the cats couldn't get to the snow in the woods, and so they wander into the dumpsters, and people come out of the restaurant, and there's some crazy growling and a decent sized cat. And you ask people, it's like, well, what would you have done if that was you? Did you have a means to defend yourself against that cat other than maintaining distance? If you got a pocket knife, you got to wait till that cat gets up close to you.
There's some kind of cougar that's endangered in Florida. That you're not allowed to
As it
kill.
should be.
There's a lot of
It should be
animals in
danger.
danger.
But cougars should not be in
all the
Florida.
dangerous
And
shit.
kill all the alligators.
Augustus Invictus was probably sacrificing a few cougars with the
Good.
goats.
He's doing
too.
better things for society than anyone else. Any other libertarian politicians I know. But in California, though, it's fucking banned to hunt, cougars with dogs. And so, it's very difficult to actually kill those things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, what are you thinking? I mean, the United States has done this. A lot of other governments across the world have done this, where they just decide to introduce predators into natural habitats to knock out a deer population. Do you know what deer's made out of? Meat. Meat is delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what we have? We have guns.
Wolf problems.
You know what wolves do? They eat things with their face.
Was this Florida where it was like the walking skeleton fish or something? I remember this was a big problem.
Probably.
I don't know. It was like the worst creature you could imagine.
Sounds like some Florida
It was
shit.
like a fish that looked like a monster that walked on land.
They have those. There's
Florida shit.
sporadically you hear about something like I heard one in Maryland one time, and it was something that was in the water in the creeks and stuff like that. And it was like I don't know if it came from China or wherever, but it's like a little fucking prehistoric monster. And they get those in different parts of the world. It's like sometimes there's some habitat around that we haven't charted, or that has stayed well hidden, or has been brought in with fruit and vegetables and whatever else, and started to make a little habitat for itself. Or there's pets. Look at how many pets people buy that just end up out in the wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, pets are weird.
Yeah.
The whole mindset of that thing is kind of strange to me. Keeping a cat in your house seems rude.
It
It's
is.
rude. It's very rude.
For the most part, they don't want to be there. You're just keeping them happy enough so they don't eat you or your children.
But they would if you.
They would if they were big enough. They'd eat your kids.
Yeah.
And actually, if you die, that's
You die,
a big
yeah.
problem. Actually, is cat ladies.
That's when
Like they'll have a heart attack. Fucking
later.
3 days later, they're all ripped up to shreds.
They
And
don't
a
love
fucking
you.
cat
They
will
were just waiting.
eat your dead body. Dogs don't do that. They'll fucking starve to death before they eat
But
you.
dogs can do that. If you have enough dogs, they start to develop a pack mentality
I can see that.
where they see you as the outsider. They see you as the enemy because there's enough of them.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and they say, "Oh, we
Makes
get
sense.
food together." Oh, that's like a food thing there, and they forget about all the nice times you pat it. And
So the
Short attention span.
Jason thing is it's going to be too fucking convoluted right now to be able to get to where I'm trying to get here. I just want the study, and no one will give it to me.
Now you see, there's a challenge in trying to communicate relevant
Wait.
information, isn't there?
All right. Okay.
It's like how much of the relevant information do
God,
we
I'm
remember?
blind.
We remember enough to go reference it if we can find it, but then they move shit around on the internet. Because unlike olden days when you had stuff on a shelf and it just stayed there, they move shit around. Servers go
But
down,
I can
they
click Control
repopulate
F
shit. Yeah,
on
I
the
know.
computer.
Even
So
with the magic of Control F,
Yeah.
it's still challenging, right?
Sure.
So many people don't know about Control F.
Okay. So he left the Heritage Institute. We need 2 races for the Heritage Institute. You got a problem. Dark Heritage, New York Times. God, I cannot get the actual study.
All right, well, that's your homework.
all right, what is the
That's my
IQ? What can you see what the hyperlink is? Like IQ is highlighted.
That probably just goes to the IQ page.
Yeah, no,
What did doctoral dissertation produce? Just as a, I can tell you what the link is without you clicking it if you just hover over it.
Yeah.
Which thing?
That's what I was
Doctoral
looking at too,
dissertation?
doctoral.
It's just a description of doctoral dissertation.
Yeah.
Oh,
Just-
jeez. What about an IQ? I assume is the same.
It's
Yeah.
it's just what the words IQ mean.
It just means there's a Wikipedia entry for that word.
Yeah.
As opposed to a footnote, the footnote actually gives you information.
Gives you another source. Yeah. Okay.
See, this is good. We're covering the
But
basics of
one
how
of
to
the
use the
Huffington Post
interwebs.
articles might actually have a link to the study.
That is possible.
Very small possibility, but we'll see. Let's see.
It's the best lead we have so far. Good heavens.
This is actually a fun test right now. Can we find what 1,000 articles have written about?
Yeah, right?
And
The
are those
Report
articles...
archive? It's got to be in there. You'd think that's his website.
No, but it's interesting
It's gotta be
how
there.
the positive side that I was talking about yesterday with anti-media is having true information that counters mainstream media
Is
propaganda.
anti-media like
Oh
a
my
website or a
God.
concept?
The dude uses
It's a media, a website.
Website, all right.
But what we're seeing now is how all these shit websites like BuzzFeed and Slate, and not that the Huffington Post doesn't have some good stuff on it, but their political or social issues reporting is drowning out the search results that we want, which is the fucking actual information that we
Which
want
might
to
be their
analyze
goal in the
ourselves.
first place. They're making a bunch of click money.
Yeah.
What do they call it when they get you to click on a site?
Bait.
Bait.
Bait
Clickbait.
and outrage porn.
Clickbait.
Outrage porn. Harnessing of the outrage porn curve.
Bell curve. Okay. I
How's
can't-
that dolly work? Does you slide it back and forth at all?
No, I haven't because you had it perfectly in.
No, slide it back and forth.
Okay,
See how
now
it
we're
works.
looking for something a little bit older. Let me just type in find
Get
immigration.
your skills going. Slow and easy, producer.
Fiscal costs of unlawful immigrants. And
That's not quite the one. No place for diversity, lottery, and rational immigration policy. Oh shit! I just fucking control find. 2011. I thought the study was like 2008 though. So I found something. No place for diversity, lottery, and a rational immigration policy. And then I get to the control. Then I'm. Sorry that I say all these things out loud. Okay.
What I might do in the future is just use a laptop, HDMI it directly to a monitor.
That's a good idea.
That's
Unless
what I
you could
kinda,
put some
that's
nice
what I did
flats
when
on
I
someone.
had the history show. I had my desktop and I would HDMI it to that monitor, change the inputs.
Yeah.
So I might have to work that in there.
Anyway,
Future-
I mean,
future
this,
changes.
yeah, I will. I'll just make it my homework report to send you all the Jason Richwine thing in regards to the IQ.
So what
IQ
was your point in your own words?
Okay, so part of my point though was trying to understand the when we look at cultures, I think there's a mistake
water.
made due to sociology and anthropology, the slight blank slate thing, where we assume that whatever differences are within cultures
Water.
are in no way genetic, that they have nothing to do with genetics. Yet at the same time, they're arguing for cultural relativism and multiculturalism, which is kind of a genetic argument that they cannot change. So we must respect these cultures. And then they will state that everything that's wrong with white culture or American culture at the same time. So they're making so many contradictory statements at the same time. And so in the study of trying to understand IQ and culture and seeing how the brain interplays with all these, another mistake that's being commonly made whenever they're talking about things like IQ is, well, we cannot find a gene that states this is what says IQ, right?
Mm-hmm.
But anyone who understands genetics knows that's not how it would work anyway, because IQ is incredibly complicated. So if it was just some gene that could be turned on and off, you would have babies who were yelled at once and possibly be docked 25 points of their IQ. But the way you raise your kids only shows about a significant difference of about 1 to 3 points as far as IQ is concerned. Nutrition is more in line with that, but once you got that, it seems pretty solid. So it's a very tricky subject. My biggest thing when in the discussion of this, the most important thing is that we always separate descriptive and prescriptive statements.
All right, so as a beginner on the subject with questions, let me
Okay.
throw a few out. All right. There's obviously this historical lens that is used certainly in higher education, and that obviously translates to how most people learn about the world. Like when 22-year-olds, the college students go on to write for a site like BuzzFeed or Slate or the Huffington Post or whatever. I mean, that's who's giving us the news.
It's true.
You know, like 22-year-olds fresh out of college are the people who write for these websites. So they've been given this container in which they historically, right, through they view the world out of that, right? Now, we learn in college, I certainly learned this was the most shocking thing, that American history wasn't a Disney movie. White Western civilization, in spite of all of its benefits, does have a history of some pretty significant instances of oppression over the course of the last 500 years.
Yep.
Right? So when you see the hardships of other cultures, especially cultures that Western civilization, and Western civilization is way too broad a term, right? Because it has good folks, it has bad folks, it has good ideas, it has bad folks. So when people talk about Western civilization being like a gift to the third world or the underdeveloped world, that term needs a better definition, I think, because Western civilization did a lot of bad things. But
Gave them the wheel. That was nice.
From the young kind of uninformed perspective, who did maybe study history or political science in college, they say, "Oh yeah, whites, the oppressors, the Americans, the oppressors." Now, there's plenty of truth to that, but that would be like a framework for organizing these differences. And yes, if Americans or the American government and its military, for example, did interact with some other culture, say in Cuba or Central America or South America or the Philippines. And there were negative consequences from that, like, destruction of family and partial destruction of civilization, like certainly what happened in the Philippines 115 years ago. And you have conditions where people are, like, obviously malnourished and in growing up in very challenging emotional states. That is going to produce lower IQs, right? Because they don't have the nutrition they need, and they don't have basically the emotional nurturing they need. So you could see how this would happen. You could see how this argument could be made. That's all I'm saying.
Exactly.
That's all I'm saying.
The argument's made doesn't mean it's valid.
Okay, so to blame white people, I don't think is fair, or to blame Americans for other people's low IQs, or blame us. Certainly, we had nothing to do with it. But those conditions could have produced offspring, generation after generation, with lower IQ.
So, if I get 100 white kids and I raise them to be all basketball players when they're young,
there was no question in my statement, by the way.
Are they going to be 6'8" in LeBron? No, right? Because there's parameters. There's only a level where you can go. So if I give a kid a lot of food when he's younger, there's a chance he's going to be about 2 inches taller because he's well nourished, right? But I'm uncomfortable stating it. When I watch the NBA, how many of those people are Asian? Incredibly low percentage, right? How many of them are white? Is it purely because of just the culture that we don't have a bunch of Chinese basketball players? No. So if the most important organ in our body, which is our brain, why would the brain be outside of the realm of evolutionary differences between the races?
Right.
And the main thing is that that's not a white supremacist argument, because statistically it is Asians who have the highest IQ. And if you take a look at poverty and its relation to criminality, there is this progressive statement that the reason why poor people commit crimes in America is because they're poor and they're not giving it a chance. But if you look at Asian communities who've come to the United States, many of them as slaves, generally you don't have a high crime rate and you have incredibly successful people. You stick Asians in damn near any community within the fucking world, give them 2 generations, they'll be more successful than the white people there.
Okay, so say Thaddeus Russell was sitting at this table.
Oh, he'd be yelling at me.
But here comes the cultural lens, right? That he would even say that Americanized Africans brought to this country for slavery, one of the things they were passing along culturally is that, and slavery probably contributed to this, is work is fucking stupid. You would agree with that, right?
No.
That he would make that argument.
Work here.
No, that he would make that argument. I'm just saying that
that is the argument he would make.
Okay, are you familiar with his book, MK? All right, so and you what? Go ahead.
And she wasn't saying anything bad about it. She wasn't saying something bad.
I haven't read the whole thing. Parts.
Oh, okay. But Asians don't have that cultural belief.
Couldn't it be that it's conformity and non-questioning of obedience and strong work that could be bred into people?
Like Asians?
I mean, look at the Chinese communities for the last 2,000, 3,000 years. I mean, there hasn't been a lot of switches between emperors and everything else, but the central government has been very, very similar in the way that it's set up. To think that couldn't have been bred into people.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying I think it is.
Yeah, it seems to actually be bred in these communities. And as long as you handle this as being descriptive and not prescriptive, so you don't.
Wait a minute, though. Do you think there's like genetic markers for that? Is that what you're saying? That I'd want to know more about. Absolutely. That I don't understand. I believe that it's possible. I just don't know what they would be or how.
I don't know what the evidence would look like.
Yeah.
So whenever we look at sociology or psychology, it is really hard to root out correlation versus causation because it's unethical to try to really do experiments where we can do it. Like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, if I just grab you and then I go, you got to start smoking now. At 15, you got to smoke a pack a day forever. And you're the twin and you're this other person, right? So twin studies are as close as we can get, but it's always it's difficult to get those outliers out. The IQ test, though, as much as people who don't understand the IQ test, they go, oh, well, there's different types of IQ, and there are all these different things. Well, there's been 120 years of testing, multiple different types of tests, to the point now where you don't even need to know the language to be able to do one.
Well, IQ is problem solving, memory, and speed, pretty much. I mean, those are the things that a lot of these tests are.
And testing for patience.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
if I look at a test, I now have the patience for the long-term goal, right? It's similar to the Oreo test.
It's kind of, yeah, that's a good point. It's like how you can keep your emotions out of
Fuck this motherfucker, I'm not doing this shit.
reasoning.
Like,
Yeah.
bam, there you go. That's your work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge point there, right? So it and the thought that it's just a test. It's like it's a hell of a test though, because it's not only like how successful you'll be in life. It's chances of unsuccessful relationships, violent offenses, and you're also having correlations with massive drug use. It's about as close as the ACE study that we talk about, the Adverse Childhood Experience study. And this is where all these things get really difficult to understand. Because is it child abuse that is causing these people to be stupid and do these fucked up things? Or is it because they're stupid that the type of people that hit their kids, therefore they lead to this kind of situation?
That's a really interesting question, because it seems to me like a high ACE score could totally like drown out a high IQ score. Could make a high IQ score look lower.
But so they've done twin studies where they had people in worse situations, but we're still fed, right? And we're talking like maybe 2 points difference.
Yeah.
I mean that's statistically
But seeing the
significant.
IQ score side by side doesn't translate to what happens in real life. Do you know what I mean?
But in the singular context, like for instance, I can't look at Neil deGrasse Tyson and say, "Oh, well, obviously you like basketball, right?" Like I
Okay,
can't make
who? Wait.
Neil deGrasse Tyson,
Okay,
black
yeah.
guy, right? You can't make it on a singular state because there's going to be random occurrences. You're going to get a Yao Ming on occasion,
Yeah.
you know, in basketball. You're going to get a 7-foot Chinese guy, but it's still really, really rare. And I'm betting that if I had, I'll go full racist. I have 100 black people and I have 100 Chinese people. If I were to select which group I wanted to do math for me in the next 30 years and which one more likely to be athletically inclined, I know exactly the choice I'm going to make. You do too, you do too, you do too. And most people don't want to admit that. We like to go, no, it's Chinese. No, this makes me uncomfortable. And there's a good reason why we're uncomfortable. And I'm almost glad that we're uncomfortable. Because the conversation of race and IQ stemmed from a very disgusting place. Eugenics.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean we have to throw it all away, though, and try to understand maybe the reason why there's economic differences in communities within the United States, for instance, isn't just because they're not being given enough or given enough shot. Maybe these are natural occurrences, and maybe we don't actually have to look at them bad, because you don't have a lot of black people yelling at Asians for having a higher income rate. They yell at white people because they're told to.
Mm-hmm.
They're not told to listen. They're not supposed to. They don't say, "Oh, I'm so mad that these Jews are doing better than me." They say white people. I mean, outside of Nation of Islam.
Mm-hmm.
But they've created enemy imagery, and it's just, why do we have to say that has to be bad? Why do we have to say these differences are necessarily bad if they're happy? If I'm happy making $50,000 a year and you're happy making $130,000 a year, is that a terrible thing?
Right now in the world, this almost seems like it's almost a uniquely American problem. This conversation.
What do you mean?
That this is a melting pot.
Yeah.
Right? So these kinds of... But there's also this conformity that's happened in these waves of immigrations. These expectations that Americanized people have had of newcomers, right? Or people who were just always American and always buying into this culture because it was the only thing they ever knew. So when people live different ways, it's almost presented as like being defective, where somewhere else in the world that might just work fine.
I completely agree, and that's the important part of describing versus prescribing these incidences.
So it will be a European problem soon.
Yeah, there will be. Like, I'm not going to do the thing where I'm saying this is going to be the breakdown of the Western civilization. I will not make that statement because I'm not a central planner. I don't know what's going to occur. Because people said that whenever Irish people came to the United States. And honestly, as much as the issues when it comes to multiculturalism and melting pot mentality within the United States, guess what? The U.S. has produced technologically wise some of the most amazing things we've ever seen, ever. I mean, just in the last 100 years. Yes, war and everything else, but the technological leaps that have been a product of the multiculturalism of the United States is pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, some of it's the multiculturalism, the other is the war agenda. War is also very much a driver behind the technology.
Absolutely. So just kill some more people and get a better iPhone. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens to Sweden. I'm fascinated. They're doing. The government's doing. They fucked up from the beginning. They said in the 70s. I mean, the part of what happened in Scandinavia and Germany, all these other areas, was that in the 1970s, people were going away from Turkey and leaving to these other areas where they're being offered welfare. It happened in France too. They said you can get.
So welfare is a magnet, and they use it to move people around.
So this first happened in Turkey in the 70s, and it caused a lot of issues regarding cross-cultural connections, because the Turks were going there, they weren't even bothering to learn the language. And in Denmark, they went so far as creating multicultural schools so that people who were non-Danes would go to these schools to try to work within the culture and figure that out. We have that times 1,000 with the Syrian conflict right now, because they're jumping out of Syria, but a good chunk of them aren't even actually Syrian refugees.
Right.
And they're not going to the countries right above them. They're going to all the countries which are giving them free shit. And Germany's so afraid of being called Nazis that they're just like, come on in. We'll give you all the stuff. And you have, who are these people, by the way? 80% are 20s to 30s males who are army trained?
I don't know. That's very scary.
Muslims.
Did ISIS
by
have
the
some
way.
sort of plan in years prior? Did they publish and say we want 500,000 people?
There's been some Muslim clerics who've stated in the last 10 years, we need to go to these European countries and fuck all their women. And
it's a different war strategy. It's
honestly, the Islamic religion, out of all the Abrahamic religions, has the least amount of reform to it, and is the most violent that we have right now. It is the most hateful towards women, the most abusive towards children. And if you want to get into the conversation of IQ,
I've always been
Syrians' IQ is 80 to 85.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've always been a relativist on this issue, and I think I need to look more into that. I've just said Islam is the newest, so it's had the least amount of the light of reason shined on it.
They have the funniest apologetics you'll ever see because they're so bad at it. Christians had C.S. Lewis, all these other people to create these great spheres of bullshit around the religion. Yeah, it's all allegories. The Muslim is no, it doesn't say that. It says that. No, it's incorrect intention. It was your book has more rules than the Old Testament. There's less actual stories and more rules stated. You have to do this. You have to kill people. We have to set up in a situation where Islam takes over the world. I mean, that's scary as far as any religion is concerned. And also, what you do find in Abrahamic religions is also the further and further you get, the more and more they bring up hell in the afterlife as being of importance. Because I think people started figuring out that they're not given the shit that they were told they were going to get. So it gets to the point of the Quran where it's just just kill yourself with some other people and you go to heaven. You know, it really, and that to me is the dumbest form of religion, is whenever all they ever bring up is what you cannot see. I mean, that's the truest way to dumb down a population, because now critical thinking is completely outside the window. It is so unimportant that you should kill yourself to get something that you cannot even fathom. A promise that isn't there. And you'll find that also when it depends on how destructive the culture is and how little power they have at the time. If you look at the book of John in the New Testament, that is in the later end. We're talking 200 to 250 years after Jesus supposedly existed. And you have Christian persecutions going on. Right? Then suddenly in John it goes, he absolutely, by the way, is the Son of God, so this is cool. He's the Son of God, we're cool, and we're going to go to heaven afterwards. We're going to be fine. We are the chosen people. This is great, guys. It's all good. It was the pep talk at the end of the game. Because Saul of Tarsus or Apostle Paul didn't mention much of this stuff at all. Apostle Paul was the first person who wrote this stuff. I call him Saul of Tarsus anyway, because he was a creep. He's a bad dude. Historically, not a very good person, but I mean, he just made up a few stories, maybe 2 out of the 30 stories of Jesus were made up about 50 to 60 years afterwards. While he was driving, a donkey? He was like, oh, I see a light. Write these stories down. I mean, that's like me writing about Elvis when no one ever knew about Elvis.
Yeah, you really want to wait for golden tablets. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm curious, how serious of a threat do you think these refugees, bringing this religion to these other countries, these countries who seem to have moved past a lot of this religious baggage? Is it as much of a threat? Because it seems generally speaking, the influence of especially things like Christianity decreased, generally speaking. So, how much of a threat do you really view it as?
I don't see
it's more because I guess like maybe, and maybe I'm just in the wrong mindset here. I don't take it that seriously. Like I guess I kind of come from the left, and I kind of. I think a lot of the Islamophobia stuff is overblown here, at least. I don't think it has much grip on this culture. Like, I don't really think it has much influence on this culture.
Islamophobia is a word made up by liberals. It's just complete bullshit. You should be phobic of terrible ideas.
No, it is terrible. I agree that it is terrible. But yeah, okay. So, what country do you think is the most threat?
Sweden, population density wise. It's purely because of the population. It actually has to do with the amount of Syrians who are going there versus the population of them right now, and the lack of growth of their population. So if you don't have having kids, they're not having children. And so but they have this huge welfare state where they're supposed to take care of all the old people within these states, but they're not having enough people being born. So then the government states, we're going to bring in immigrants. By the way, the reason why a lot of these kids aren't getting born is because they're getting taxed to hell. You don't even have the benefit of having kids. One, you have the iPhone, so why are you going to bother have children? Because you can play around all day and everything else. The state will take care of you when you're old, so you don't have to worry about your kids taking care of you. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to be taxed to hell. And you're also going to have to work more so you can stick your kid in public school, so you've just removed all of the benefits of having a child, like the relationship with them.
It sounds like slavery.
Now, so what about other countries? I mean, so say worst case scenario.
Let me just finish up with the Sweden one real quick, though. Then the government states, well, we need to bring in immigrants to make up for our population
to pay into the system.
But if they don't, a lot of them don't work. A quarter of the women can't even read. So what jobs are they going to do? In Sweden, because Sweden with business regulations, they can't even do a lot of the menial tasks, but you're still transferring those over to China.
Yeah.
Because they have the slave labor there. We don't do slave labor in Western countries. You take care of that in Asian countries.
All the Western countries have baby boomers that they're seeking to support in a system that's outbalanced. And then they're looking to replace the baby boomers like with an earlier workforce, but the people they're bringing in, they're not people contributing necessarily to fill that gap. They're people who are also taking benefits away from everybody else who's already paid into the system. So it just seems like a tactic to divide and conquer a population.
Oh, it's very good for control.
Who's incentivized? Who's creating the magnet that's attracting people in? It's the welfare state. Where did we get the welfare state? Through the Great Depression. We borrowed it from England, who had implemented it through Alfred Zimmern and these other guys on the Rhodes Roundtable who called for a welfare state because that's how they were going to support the empire. They were going to draw from other places and call it the Commonwealth and take people's money and use it to support, the Queen's carriage rides and shit, all those properties that the British people pay for.
And
Sweden, don't they still have a king? I mean, there's a lot of countries that are so-called Western countries that never had a fight for democracy.
Yeah, but Sweden's fascinating too because what you had at least, especially prior to the bringing of the Turks, was cultural hegemony. And it happened to Denmark too. I believe Nazis went to Denmark and the king just resigned right then and there. They went through and said, no, this is exactly how a white civilization should be. Like, they didn't even need to do anything. Like, oh, there's no Jews. You guys don't have any brown people. You're just whites hanging out with each other. Cool, we're out.
There's a lot of countries like that, mostly in Eastern. Now there are countries in Eastern Europe.
Denmark, Finland, Sweden. Anyway, but you have massive cultural hegemony. And part of that, though, is that you have a little bit of shame. So if you're living off the state and you know your neighbor and you all look the same, because we still have that tribalistic mindset, you go, what are you doing with your life? Get your shit together. You can call them out on that. But if you don't have respect for your neighbor or your community or anyone else around you, you don't give a fuck if you're living off them because you don't even know them. So if I'm in New York, which is the worst welfare state you could possibly have, you have a bunch of people who all hate each other because they're bundled in.
Yeah.
They've completely destroyed the community due to the creation of the ghettos.
Different backgrounds makes them hate each other even more.
And then you just go, fuck it, white people screwed me over. I deserve their money. I don't need to work. And you have the Puerto Rican communities. And then you have that in white communities, too, who then look at rich white people and go, rich white people screwed me over.
Yeah, I mean...
blacks screwed me over because they screwed over my check and now they're taking my jobs, therefore I'll take welfare. Florida.
No, I can see really how that happens. I was in Manhattan yesterday and I was like, fucking white people. It was it can be really frustrating when you see like the barriers to having a good time in a place like that, and feeling comfortable in a place like that, and feeling.
And then let's go to a fucking ghetto and go, wow, I feel like I'm gonna get robbed every 5 seconds. So you get the reverse there, because it might be cheap to do something here, but I'm gonna get raped.
Well, it's funny. I was downtown in Brooklyn the day before. Yeah. I was more comfortable. Yeah, in Times Square, I was more comfortable, even though there were thousands more people, and all kinds of variables that didn't exist when I was just sitting on a stoop on a quiet Brooklyn street.
So, what's the difference?
It's perception, I think, for
I
me.
think it's people look like you.
Yeah,
they're again descriptive, not prescriptive. And I always have to state this here because it's very easy for me. If I was white, I couldn't say a lot of what I'm saying right now. Right? Like a lot of these things could come off completely as white supremacist bullshit.
Yeah, but now the mainstream media is going to pick this up and they're going to start calling you a white Hispanic.
I'm a Puerto Rican, Jew,
You're
black.
a race traitor.
Right? I am a race traitor on all ends. Mm-hmm. Right? I'll talk about Jewish bankers. I'll talk about the problems of black culture. But I'll eat tacos, so I don't have anything bad to say about Hispanics. But it's just this conversation. It is a very uncomfortable conversation, but it is, what are some truths about our evolutionary biology? And one of the biggest ones is that whenever someone who came into our group who did not look like us was coming by, he was probably trying to kill us.
Yeah.
And that was ingrained in us for, 200,000 years. If a traveler came by with a boat, you better fucking kill him. Now we just fly to places.
I don't even think it didn't look like us. We didn't recognize him.
Yeah, you didn't recognize him. Yeah. And this is what's weird to me when I hear libertarians talking about the greatness of tribalism. Like, you guys wouldn't all be in the same tribe, by the way.
Yeah.
This is multiculturalism. This is the fact that I'm able to hang out with y'all shows that.
Well, school's like an artificial tribe that they create and try to amalgamate through
create control,
taking people out of their natural environment and putting them in a place where, it's easy to control people because they're all facing the same way. They're all supposed to be doing the same thing at the same time. They got the
black ghettos were really good proof of this
bells.
because before the institutionalization of black ghettos, we had segregation that would occur naturally in places. Blacks would hang out with each other. It's kind of like if you go to Chinatown, would anyone really call Chinese people racist for only hanging out with other Chinese people in that place? Probably not, because they're just mitigating with people, working with people that they know. Mm-hmm. So these black communities, a kid would go outside and you have a neighbor, he would be watching the kid and they'd be taking care of each other. Like they'd work within their own black community. And then it was frowned upon if you were trying to rely on the community as a whole for taxes and things like that, or welfare. Mm-hmm. Once you institutionalize black poverty through welfare programs and then removed, and they would look like white social workers would come to this place and go, that's dirty over there. What's wrong with that apartment building? I don't like that house. That's not the family I need. We need to institutionalize all this shit for their protection.
So then, are you talking about things happening like HUD, where it's here's a community of people, but let's stack them on top of each other. And now, when they walk out of their door, instead of seeing a community, all they see is other closed doors. Yeah.
That's what an apartment complex is.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's very isolating.
Yeah.
We live in an apartment complex. I don't know anyone who lives there.
Well, what happens when real estate and corporations decide that real estate they gave to those ghetto areas is something they want? What do they call that when they
gentrification?
Swap out the communities. They're like, no, we want that. Now you guys move over here.
It's kind of both.
Domain and gentrification, depending on how they do it.
Depending on,
Because I don't really have a problem with gentrification if it means a place was, Rhode Island's really good showing you this. What they did was in Rhode Island, there was this great place in Providence, this old houses, 17th, 18th century houses.
You mean the big slave trading houses? Mm-hmm. The breakers and whatnot?
Beautiful. They're made by naval brigade guys. So you'd have Navy guys, and then they'd go in there, they build up the whole house.
Yeah, this is in all the American great families, the Vanderbilts,
But it wasn't just them, though. I mean, there was nice houses all around kind of the Bay Area.
That spreads.
Providence. Yeah. So that spreads around. And then some asshole there in the 70s goes, let's make that government housing. They just have a bunch of black families in there who aren't paying rent. They just give them the house. Fucking destroy everything. Because they have no reason to take care of it. One, they're being given something that they didn't work for. So that's already going to cause a problem. And which any of us know. If we're just given something instead of working for it. I was given a car when I was 18. I certainly treated that thing like shit. I treat my Subaru...
Rental cars.
Yeah, rental cars. We treat them like hell. They destroy those things. And then with gentrification, they go, that's no longer being government housing. white people start buying these things up again. Then white people bought it up, and then liberals said this is gentrification. It's like anything white people touch, the liberals seem to like to shame white people for it.
Well, it's the difference. Well, really, what you can show is that it's the difference between buying and owning and not buying and owning.
Well, what's the difference when you got to pay some sort of tax or something like that when you don't really own it? You just rent it from the government, like a house. If you don't pay your property taxes, you're just really renting that.
But people are convinced themselves that they own it, I think. I mean, like, when I explain to my dad that, like, you don't own your house because you spend $20,000 a year on property taxes. Well, I own it. He's like, well, I could sell it. I was like, yeah, you don't kind of own it, though.
But he could paint it unless he lives in, like, a HOA.
He loved that house, took care of it, did everything he wanted to do, built the whole house up.
You can paint it any color.
The whole thing. But, yeah, he doesn't really own the home, so that's going to be an issue there. But it's just the problem here is that it's almost impossible to even have the race conversation when there's so many fucked up, corrupt incentives all based around incorrect views of the race conversation. Because what was pitched to us was that we're all exactly the same, and egalitarianism is a virtue. And I just don't buy it, right? Like, I wouldn't... Sephardic Jews who have, IQs of like 120 to 125, they also kill themselves a lot, not very athletically inclined, and die of a number of different types of particular diseases that other people don't, right? So that doesn't mean that they're better. It just means that they're different. And then you have, black tribes, Western Africans versus Eastern Africans. One can sprint and the other one can do long distance running. Is one better than the other? Absolutely not. Is the reason why, Icelandic whites and these people in the northern areas are incredibly intelligent due to vast amounts of scarcity, and therefore you had to plan for the future in order to figure out how to live? Possibility. But it's the pressure of coercive egalitarianism brought up by Marxism that causes a lot of these issues, like the welfare state we have right now, where we're trying to force everybody to be the same, instead of being okay with the differences. Because if it's the same conversation we were just having earlier. I could go work for the state and make $80,000 a year or whatever, or I could choose to do what I'm doing right now, maybe make $40,000, but this is a choice I make, and I'm happier because of it. We shouldn't infantilize people. We shouldn't infantilize women, for instance, who decided at 28 years old to not go into STEM fields. Oh, you're only doing that because of patriarchy. No, maybe because it's a choice that you don't want to do. But when we forcibly do you know exactly what I'm talking about with that. Like, third wave radical shitty feminists in academia pulled that stuff. They say that you have no choice. The reason why you're doing it is because of media.
Because you've been socially conditioned to do this. Because like they'll point to things like the school system encourages the girls not speak up as much as little boys and things like that. And I mean they add a lot to that. And I think a lot of it does come down to just personal choice. Some people are going to be more inclined towards certain fields, and maybe there is some social influence on that. I don't doubt, but. Is it everything? No, it's not like always culture, always biology, or always one thing. That's really reductive to think about it that way. There's a lot of factors. And, I really liked math and science kind of early on, and then I just kind of switched and got more into English and liberal arts type stuff. So I kind of went that direction. And, it would have been, I would be making a lot more money if I majored in the STEM field in college, but that's just not what I wanted to do. But I never felt coerced to do liberal arts stuff. It's just what I like to do. And I think, that's a valid thing to say. You can't take away someone's agency and say, oh, they've only been influenced by the culture, and that's the only reason they're choosing this. It's like we live in a really, especially the millennial generation has grown up in a really great age of prosperity. We've had a lot of choices that we can make compared to older generations. We've had a lot less social conditioning and, cultural women. Influences, especially women. We have more freedom of choice than ever before when it comes to the careers that we want to do. So to say that, it is infantilizing, and that is an argument that's always bothered me, because it's like, no, I chose to do liberal arts because it's something I like to do. It turns out I'm not that much of a math and science person, as much as I'd like to be. I'd much rather be able to do a program. I'd much rather be a programmer and make, over $100,000 a year or something. I just can't wrap my mind around that stuff, though. It's just, people are different. So that does really bother me, and it also does bother me that there's this strain of the kind of third wave radical feminists that make these crazy declarations like my gender studies degree should be worth as much as a STEM degree. that's like ridiculous. Like, you're obviously not producing a lot, you know, in the market that we live in with that degree. You're just not, and you have to factor in demand and things like that. And obviously there's, you know, influences, you know, coercive influences on the market. But I mean, come on, like, no one needs to.
Why is it a virtue? Why is it considered the absolute virtue or necessary thing for a 50-50 divide between STEM fields of men and women? Like, when I listen to NPR, I'm like, why does that matter?
It doesn't have to be. Now, if you want to talk about, like, you know, maybe sexism in certain fields, that's a different argument. I think there is maybe a case to be made for some of that, like maybe sexism in tech or whatever. But I mean, when you have vast gender differences, you're gonna have different ways that people resolve conflicts. For example, like, men and women resolve conflicts a little bit differently. So if you're working in a male-dominated field, you are going to have to learn to speak, you know, in that different type of language a little bit. And maybe there's problems with that. But yeah, does there have to be a 50-50 thing? Should there be quotas and things like that? I think that's insulting as a woman to say that, oh, well, there has to be a certain amount of women in this type of field, in this, like, tech space or whatever. Like, that's really insulting, because what you're saying is that the women who are already there, who worked hard to be at, you know, parity with those men, you know, aren't good enough, basically, and that you need to maybe lower the standards or change the standards in some way. And I think that's really insulting.
It's all the same progressive narrative.
Yeah.
It's like, why would you want to have agency when we can help you realize that you're actually a victim of unseen cultural forces that you can't control? But the good news is we can help.
Right.
Why would
We
you go
made the problem, and I have the solution.
Take our hands. Take our hands.
And how do they have the money to
pull
do
you
that?
up.
Only because tax dollars are there that they can offer other people's money to help. And that's the thing. It's like, and that is partially the responsibility of the people who pay taxes, and partially the responsibility of people who vote to claim to have representatives who control that type of stuff. And it's partially because nobody does anything about it, and they just, you know, they're like, oh, death and taxes, it's just facts of life. Like, you know, that's just how it has to be. Like, it's always been that way, or never could be any different.
Right.
Well, it's easier to be a victim because you never have to take responsibility for your actions.
Man, whose decision was that to just make victimhood a fucking sexy thing for our generation?
Like the progressives.
I mean, it was, but it's so perfect for manipulation.
Well, I think you see it on both sides. I think you see it a lot in conservatism too.
Oh, no, absolutely, both sides.
Love to be oppressed. God, they love it.
The war on Christianity and Christmas.
People actually believe there's a war on the most predominant religion and, you know, culture in this country,
and the funnest holiday.
Still influences, you know. Yeah.
If the American government could go against Iraq in the same kind of manner that atheists have waged a war on Christmas, I'd be a way happier person. Like, if they just made, like, silly memes and shit and said stuff on Facebook and called it Decemberween instead. Like,
Decemberween?
That's what I always call it. But I'm an asshole. But I just, by the way, are we all good? Camera-wise and everything else? Yeah, you're good. Everything's cool? Yeah. It's the Marxist dialectic thing. There's just the idea that everything needs to be equal on all these ends. If we set it up so that the NBA had to have affirmative action, it'd be really boring. Or it'd be really funny. It would just be a LeBron James.
I wanted to answer your question the other way when you said which people would you have do math and which people would you have play basketball.
Yeah.
I would say it depends on whether I wanted the best results or I wanted to do something funny. You're right. It would suck. Well, no.
It would be interesting, right? But you wouldn't have the best players. We just wouldn't. And it is really, really silly when I hear Thaddeus Russell. He was on Joe Rogan, and he was talking about race. And Joe was like, it seems that black people tend to be better at these types of things. Maybe there's reasons for that. He's like, well, did you know it was Jews in the past? People thought Jews were the best. I was like, because the blacks hadn't got there yet. Mm-hmm. That's why.
Because they couldn't be there.
They weren't allowed to be there. And as soon as blacks came into boxing, they beat the shit out of all the Jews, and Jews went back to banking.
So what
and owning the media.
I wonder... Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so I think it's really easy to bash progressivism with this because it's something that we've seen more recently, but I think it's important to kind of go back and realize that the victimhood thing spans so far back And if you go back to the origins of the people who
Old Testament.
Old Testament, but let's just talk about, United States, the Puritans kind of coming over and taking shit over. I mean, they thrived on the victimhood thing. Like the whole puritanical culture thing, I mean, that's based around victimhood. They were, victims who left, and then they were making arguments that they were being persecuted by the indigenous people who were here when they were fucking raping and murdering all of them. I mean, like the victimization thing, it's such a strong.
What are some examples of that?
argument.
I'm interested. Like, what are some specific examples of that? The Puritan victims, maybe of England.
Well, there was the lie
victims of the king.
that it was because of the war against the religion.
The Anglican Church.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of that was overblown.
Right.
Oh, I'm sure they were the nuttiest of all.
Exactly.
Right.
Like,
And then if you go back and read some of the readings too, or some of the writings of the Puritans, I mean, they are saying things like, oh, these indigenous people are, they're killing our women and they're trying to invade us. It's like, you motherfuckers came over to their land, set up camp, and said, this is our place now. Like, people are going to be a little pissed off. And they started it, and the indigenous people were helping them. Like, they were helping them, like, survive the winter and shit. Yeah, and they were still like, well, these savages, isn't this adorable? Like, it was condescension along with still believing they were the victims. And it's a very I mean, you still see that a lot.
How interesting! What an interesting parallel with equality, with the insult of equality, right? Because they come here with this belief, like just like there's prevalence today in this, we're all equal. So what's the real problem? Yeah. Who's fucking? If I'm equal to everybody else and we're all equal, why are some of us getting fucked over? Who's doing it? Yeah. Is it race? Is it sex? Is it gay versus straight? These people came here, I guess, 400 years ago?
Yeah.
And they believed that they were God's chosen people.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And like they get here, the story was interesting because like the English, God, everywhere they go, they just cause so much trouble. They got here and they had been fishing since like the 1570s, and they brought all their filthy European diseases with them.
Yeah.
So
and
a lot of
unclean.
Yeah. So they had things like it was immodest to remove all your clothes at once to bathe. So they
Native Americans described the whites as just the dirtiest, grossest people. They were like they're stinky. They have bad skin. They don't wash.
Yeah.
And
to teach them like basic hygiene.
But the story, the funniest story is, or it's not funny. It's actually, I don't know why I said funny. It's like one of the most sad and tragic stories ever. But it's like, wow, that's funny that I've never known that. They took this.
Who's there?
The fishermen, either French or British, I think in this case British, they would take sometimes the little natives that they would find. I mean, this goes back to Columbus. Columbus did this, and they'd bring them back to England. And so was the story with Squanto the Indian from the famous. Do you know that story? Mm-hmm. How he was kidnapped and brought to Europe, and when he came back, he was already westernized. So he was in a good position to actually, actually help them. Yeah. And plus, everybody he knew had been killed, because of the diseases. And also, lateral to that, I guess that because there had been natives in the Mass Bay area farming the land for decades before they all died, I think from smallpox, the land was already like cut under. So like these people show up there and they say, "There's farms here, but there's no people. Thanks, God." Mm-hmm. Like that's basically part of their story. So then when shit starts going wrong, it's like, goddamn
savages.
Yeah, I mean, what else? They didn't have racism.
Yeah. They
didn't have sexism.
Yeah. So, when we're talking about the victimhood thing, though, and always goes back to the Jews, but the victimhood mentality, though, you want to talk about solidification of victimhood mentality, you have the Old Testament. The Jews were never slaves to the Egyptians. The entire Exodus story was completely made up. All of it. Every single fucking part. There's no historical truth to any statement made in there. They made up an entire culture around them being persecuted and then them becoming the chosen people out of it. And therefore, they have to take over these lands and change the young and change the religion and everything else. I mean, they just lied. They made up an entire religion regarding victimhood. What do they do now? Any single time you say anything about Israel, what about the Holocaust?
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Right, yeah,
It's
you
every
can't
sin-
talk about Israel's into Palestine without a shit ton
which
of
I
Christians
can
being
immediately
like, oh
make
my God.
I can immediately make the analogy. Okay, what's going on in Israel right now? Well, there's a genocide going on. Who's it perpetrated by? It's being perpetrated by the Jews. What was another genocide perpetrated by the Jews within the last 120 years? What happened in the Bolshevik Revolution? How many Christians were fucking murdered by Jewish groups?
In the Bolshevik Revolution by specifically Jewish groups?
Yeah, I mean, if we could look up the statistics, but I know that the people behind the revolution, as far as that is concerned, predominantly Jewish, even though they were only a small percent of the population.
Oh, well, they were the prime movers behind
Yeah.
communism. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And communism.
Jews were, not the Jews. The power of the word the.
Did I use that?
It makes sense.
I don't know.
I know
You've been
that.
using the.
Oh no! I'm gonna put this. If I put this on my channel, I'm gonna put this in the beginning. I say whenever I say the Jews, I mean some Jews. Excuse me.
Jews,
Just cut out
not the Jews.
Yeah,
Just Jews.
it's the power of the preposition.
Otherwise, David Duke's flipping through. He's like, I like this show. These, they know. They know.
They know.
They say the Jews instead of just Jews.
And the thing
That's good.
is fucking David Duke, man. God, that white supremacist.
I was just thinking about that.
Yeah,
I just go by the facts. Everything is relative.
we saw a white supremacist being like interviewed by Christopher Hitchens from the 1990s. It was one of the funniest fucking things we've ever seen. That's a funny thing to play right now, but it's a little long. But
It's got some good singers.
But the point in all of the things I'm talking about right now is every one of them is going to be incredibly sensitive. I need to be aware of how I'm stating them so that it comes off correctly. Like, I have to be hyper aware of all these things. And I think anyone who's talking about this should be hyper aware. Because if you use this information incorrectly, you can justify the most horrific things possible. Mass deportation leading to massive amounts of death. I mean, genocides. We've seen what scientific racism causes. But I think any discussion of like, and this is Thaddeus Russell's progressive bullshit thing he does.
Mm-hmm.
He just says he's not a progressive, but he does a lot of leftist stuff.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
He does a lot. I'm very uncomfortable. He'll say any single mention of like IQ or brain scans. Oh, that's just scientific racism. That went away in during right after World War II. I mean, no one believes that stuff. I was like, no, there's a whole fucking science to.
Oh, he said that in one of the shows. You were there. He said
and
a
I
brain
yelled at him.
scan's going to tell me who I am.
Yeah,
that
and there's some truth to that statement. What is a brain scan? Because it's a little bit more complicated than that.
Yeah.
But this whole like anti-science thing where, oh well, because we don't know everything yet, therefore we can't really use science. I mean, Christians did that, and it's called the God in the gaps theory. Every single time a science answers something, the gap becomes tinier as to what God could have caused it. So now it's just like, what happened 1 minute before the Big Bang? God.
Yeah.
And therefore you have to believe all this stuff in heaven and hell exists. Wait, how does this all equate from just he started it up? It doesn't, but religion.
So it's a retreat. It's their retreat from everything
Yeah.
can be explained. It's like, okay, these things. Okay,
Yeah.
these things. All right, this thing.
Yeah, and at the same time, when he's talking about these points of scientific racism being invalid, or the genetics that play a part in this, he'll then use terms like black culture, Jewish culture. He uses all these words as if it's integral to the human being that they are, and then whenever we try to push them away from it, it becomes worse and sadder. It's like, well, aren't you making the same point I'm making right now? That maybe there's some kind of tie between culture and genetics. And the best question though that can be asked after all of that is, why do you care?
Exactly.
Right, that's what I was going to say. Like, I mean,
Because I'm a
it's not
hobbyist
fair.
and I
It's like,
love trolling.
it's, you know,
What's the utility? Is my
Right.
question.
The utility is, if we can get rid of the religion of egalitarianism and coercive egalitarianism, we can start being realistic about this whole, we have to be pushing affirmative action. We have to be pushing women to go into STEM fields. We need to be making sure that everyone is equal. The results of denying this have been pretty bad. Then the results of acknowledging it and using the government to enforce it have been really bad. So the government fucks it up either way.
Well, it sounds
But-
like consequences of telling people what to do,
Yeah.
and people being like expecting other people to tell them what to do as a way of life.
And knowledge shouldn't be hedonistic. It shouldn't be. We shouldn't talk about this because this won't lead to something positive.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I don't do, knowledge for me, it's slightly hedonistic because I just love learning new things, especially controversial stuff. It's fabulous to me. I mean, like anarchist, atheist, obviously I'm a little weird. I have a penchant for specific things, but it is kind of if an idea makes me really uncomfortable, why is it making me uncomfortable? And is it because the idea is completely untrue, or is it because I want it to be untrue? And then I go from there. And then I get really, really fascinated. And I did this when I was looking up, when I was studying concentration camps or Holocaust or any of the stuff, or the Zionists for hundreds of years. And maybe there is an effort by the media to keep this victimhood of Jews thing going on. You watch that Steven Spielberg documentary we were talking about earlier. It's like, this is all just lies. It's really bad when you're lying about how bad the Nazis are.
Yeah, you don't have
They're
to lie
already
about how
bad. Why are you doubling down?
There's no reason to.
You don't have to say Jews are ripped apart, or that 6 million died. You don't have to keep repeating 6 million, unless, of course,
every day, and then ate them out of her shit every day for a long time.
It's a crazy story.
The
really
Nazis are so bad. Why are you guys going to make stuff up? I mean,
yeah, and they were bad. But the 6 million number too, by the way, that keeps getting brought up. It's like, well, there kind of was a story among Jews in the rabbinical writing.
Yeah.
That the moment that 6 million Jews are murdered, the country of Israel shall be formed. It's like, why do you keep bringing up the 6 million thing? One guy got called a Holocaust denier because he said maybe more like 4.5. Holocaust denier, anti-Semite, you hate Jews, Nazi. I was like, whoa, what's going on there? Why do you care that much? You don't even have the names of the vast majority of this. And if we look at Red Cross or census reports before and after World War II, they don't seem to back your 6 million claim. It's very odd that you keep stating this. And if you look at like the 1910s and 20s, there was news clippings from Jewish newspapers saying 6 million Jews died somewhere. Like it'll just say that there was some kind of Jewish genocide because a couple of Jews died, and they'll say 6 million. Now is the time for Israel. And then they've got the master plan. It was set up. But yeah.
Wow.
See how uncomfortable I can make all of us?
No, I feel good.
Megan's over here. She's just like, Jesus Christ, do I do a show with this guy? He's nuts.
Hide from timeline.
Type in million.
Million?
Yeah. What did he say, Brett?
You know I don't hide from this shit. So.
No, it's great.
Bengal
It's
famine of
wonderful.
1943.
Wonderful.
It's
Benghazi, all right, Bengal famine of 1770, 10 million dead. 1.4.
It's okay.
Cool.
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
I'm glad you
How you good?
beer.
NSA
Yeah,
and Turbine Robot can
Actually,
pump
I need to run to the
malware.
I
restroom
need to
real
go
quick.
some
Can
too,
I-
actually.
Can I come off?
Can you help me out?
Right.
Yeah.
You just unclip this?
It's fascinating.
Just wanna
6
make sure that
million
fucking-
Jews.
All right.
Thank you.
Hold up for me, guys. I want to
Yeah.
get into the 6 million Jews thing.
Oh boy.
Because I'm.
This is one of those conversations.
I'll play for my guitar at the last minute. It makes it look happy. Oh, that's good. They're cool.
So then you watch a video like this, and you're like, well, how much full of shit are they? So then you go out and you find those old newspapers. I mean, that dude did.
Oh, is that guy just hanging out with his papers? That's cool.
What's his accent?
I can't hear. Wait, I gotta put this in.
It's they use the trees.
I don't know, is there audio with it? Anyway, he's got the newspapers. He's reading you the headlines.
8th, September 8th.
All right, but that's not the microphone, right? This is something.
No, that's... oh, the mic is right here. There you go.
He almost sounds Scottish. Or
Anyway, that's the power. You can search, find stuff. This is stuff I found. I needed to put it someplace. This is how I store it. Here's a good one. 1829, Baron Rothschild to purchase all Palestine. What's that look like? Click the attachment.
With that actual news article?
Yeah, watch this.
Holy shit.
Let me see how to... On the web brain, sometimes you gotta do it differently than the desktop. Click on the thing right there. Alright, so now you can see the newspaper. Control plus that.
It's still going to be, it's just really difficult to see.
It is stated that Baron Rothschild, what's that say? Celebrated? Maybe
It is
it's cut
stated
off.
that Baron Rothschild
Is there a scroll here? Well, there we go. Celebrated.
celebrated London Jewish banker is about to purchase all of Palestine, the Holy Land,
How much money do you
including
have?
Jerusalem, as a kingdom for the Jews.
By the way, these.
Over whom,
I just
over whom he is to be king.
Okay.
Oh,
Oh my god.
Okay. So now,
well.
Fucking funny.
all right. So the point is, this is 1829.
As you do.
Yeah.
When was Israel created?
Wait, say that again?
This is 1829 newspaper. When was
So
Israel
the state of
created?
Israel?
1947?
Yeah.
All right, so like over 100 years before they created the state of Israel, there was a newspaper clipping. Now, you can question the veracity of that reporter's integrity or whatever you want.
Yeah.
That maybe that guy's full of shit. But he happened to prophesy a future that actually manifested. So maybe there's some truth in that story, even if it comes from a racy kind of Colombian star. I don't know, it was a Maryland newspaper or Ohio newspaper, I think.
All right, I say we wrap this. We got to
I
wrap.
have a pretty shrill voice, so.
We got to wrap because you guys got to get back to New Hampshire.
Yeah. So, what did we learn today?
Are we being recorded right now?
Yeah, I think you're on.
Your microphone isn't on, right?
I don't have a microphone. This is my microphone.
Oh, okay. What have we learned today? Well, so it's interesting that we ended up tunneling down this kind of very dark road based off of simply the topic of egalitarianism and eugenics.
I think we've actually provided, accidentally, an interesting commentary on alternative media.
Yeah.
That we gravitate to the most provocative of topics with the most minor of provocations.
I've learned a lot about myself in this. This whole thing made me very uncomfortable, but slightly less uncomfortable than if you're a white dude. And what does that say about me? Am I a little bit racist with that?
There's absolute truth to the fact that the things I just stated, one, I'm going to be very honest. I've spent a while trying to figure out a way to be able to deliver this message, to think about it in a way that doesn't just come off as just crazy racist bullshit.
And it's not racist because
it's not racist.
Your
It's
lineage is
descriptive.
what?
Black, Puerto Rican, and Jewish. So
no
I'm
one can talk shit on Carlos. I mean, he's got it covered right there.
No, but I have that to me undermines the beauty that is the black race, and that they can be just as racist as white people. Like there's this misinterpretation of fact where they think that only racism can exist by white
All right,
people.
so you're using this word racism.
Mm-hmm.
I once upon a time looked that up in a dictionary. And do you know what the origin of the word is?
Oh, I don't think it's true what you're about to say.
Hold on.
Go for it.
First off, the popular term was racialism up until the 1930s when H.G. Wells first used it in the English language there was a citation. So it was from the Oxford English Dictionary. And you look and it shows the use of language, right? So racism showed up in communist propaganda in the Soviet Union as a word. And then H.G. Wells was the first to use that word in the English language. And now it is like the buzzword for everything that is progressive political agenda out there. I'll tell you what.
So there is room, though.
I don't know if I have the OED down here.
No, well, here's the thing: is like I looked that up and I remember it, but to be fair, maybe the
I got it on my computer upstairs. I can show you.
Maybe the source is incorrect.
So like. Even regardless of the origins, maybe. I mean, I think there's room for discussion.
Well, it's like the origins and use in our language. Because racialism had a similar connotation, but there was like a more succinct word that was replaced, and no one even talks in terms of racialism. So you don't see all the history of racialism because everyone's searching about racism, which is a 20th century and 21st century now phenomenon.
But it is an extension of tribalism, so I think it's fair to say that racism still exists where maybe there's strong tribal mentalities, and generally think it's a bad thing.
Boom. most literally in the 1930s. Now, if I take you upstairs and show you what the first written reference of that in the English language was, it was an H.G. Wells reference. And the prior references to that were in the 1920s in Soviet Russia.
Okay.
So all I'm saying is there's a communist agenda being pushed, cultural Marxism.
But there
out there.
are
And then everyone's
races.
yes, there seems to be people who have acclimated differently to different parts of the world where they grew up. People call that races, right?
Racism? No. I'm saying
the
that there is racism, though. There are people who are like blanket.
Sure, there's people that are ignorant all over the place.
Yeah, it's just not bad to have a
You
word for
encounter
it,
them
right?
all the time out there in the world. Some of them are driving cars. Some of them are using their mouths. Some of them are doing other shit, putting cuffs on people and shit, wearing costumes.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and so this is a topic that does kind of, make me a little uncomfortable because of where I grew up, which was extremely racist and sexist and very culturally conservative. So it is something
Culturally conservative. That's a term for it, sure. Yeah, culturally conservative.
Like Christian.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, when you grow up down the street from an abortion clinic that gets, bombed and the doctor's shot and killed and then burned to the ground within the span of 10 years, then you're dealing with a place in America that thankfully doesn't exist in most places, but there are extreme pockets of crazy religious conservative fundamentalism. At play there,
People
and
who are
those
harnessed
people,
by some
and it's
belief
not
system.
going to change in that region of the country for quite a long time, because the money is concentrated in the hands of the good old boys club, and they very much have control over the politics and economics, and then all this, in certain regions still. So.
And the topic, this whole we've been going to the race thing. We talked about some Jews, and there were other groups. Is the thought of why is this kind of making me uncomfortable, and how do I move forward and trying to think about the subject? Because the way this argument was first presented to me was by a guy who was becoming a white supremacist.
Yeah.
I mean, he was my best friend for a long period of time. We both became atheists, anarchists, and libertarians, all this stuff at the same time. We figured all these different things. And then he presents to me with this whole by the way, Holocaust never happened. Blacks are dumb, and all these other, and he just starts really presenting. And then he does this whole miscegenation. I got divorced, and he said the reason why I got divorced is because whites and Puerto Ricans aren't meant to be with each other. That's what he said a day after my fucking divorce, and he's been my friends for 20 years, right?
Wow.
So everyone here should really have a tainted view of the race and IQ conversation. I'm the only non-white in here by American definitions, and my best friend became a white supremacist who said the entire reason I got divorced is because whites and Puerto Ricans shouldn't be with each other. But my entire life has been I've been attracted to extremely different views and trying to research, and I find it fun. It's a hobby. And as long as you take it as something that is simply describing things, and you're not 100% sure,
versus prescribing
things,
Yeah.
then that's important, and you can dabble in it. I don't think it's that. I hate the argument the utilitarian argument for truth. If people know that, then things will become worse. If people find out there's no God or that the state is evil, then things will get worse. I just don't. But that's people make that argument.
Yeah.
That is utilitarianism. Progressivism.
How do you assuage those fears? Those are just indicated fears.
Well, just try and not seem like a crazy person whenever you're talking about it, so they're not afraid of ever talking about these subjects. If the only time they ever hear about the Holocaust is from a crazy bum in the street, well, I don't really want to think of what he's thinking about right now. I don't want to go down that road. And this is why the media also makes people who talk about these things look way crazier than a lot of them are.
Sure.
You, instead of using the brain, you should have a bunch of Post-it notes everywhere with weird connections. But no, you have the brain now instead.
Yeah, it's and if you got a question, and this is just how I map my understanding, so I might be wrong, and I change stuff.
You have a
all the time.
Rothschild's bookshelf. I mean, you're supposed to be a kook. But you're a well-read person who can speak.
Neil Ferguson and Ron Chernow and some of those other financial family official biographers, they're excellent writers, and you can learn a lot just from reading their version of the story.
Yeah.
They give you a little piece. They're like, oh, yeah, we were doing this. And then when you look at the other stuff and the roundtable documents and all these other sets of documents, it's a broader view.
Yeah, so
you're not interested in learning those things.
Yeah.
At least I wasn't interested in learning those things because school told me I already knew about how the world works. Surely, with all this thousands of hours of schooling, if there was one financial family that seemed to have a monopoly on Western culture for the past 300 years, they would have told me that. They'd have made it explicit and said, Rich, look, here are all the books out here. but they didn't.
But they didn't. And I think what also attracted me, though, to some of this was the fact that I was in sociology and anthropology classes in college, who every single thing they said seemed to be wrong about ethics, about society's runs, or about the proper role of government, about all these things.
You're talking about college.
College.
Now, this is the biggest. This is the college deception is even bigger than the public school deception.
Save your money.
Because that's when you think you're really fucking smart when you leave there.
Yeah.
And you know, probably, I mean, you're more.
You know,
Oh, I was a
Yeah.
college know-it-all hippie, totally.
Yeah.
So if they could be this wrong about economics, right? Because they're so wrong about economics that it blows your mind. You're like, I cannot believe that we have tens of thousands of people getting a degree in absolute bullshit, and it's being said as truth. At least when you take a religious studies degree, they generally talk about it like it's a fucking myth. But within sociology and the Marxist, you're well aware, critical theory and all this stuff, which is just Marxist bullshit, and they shovel it all as truth. When they keep reinforcing this whole race doesn't exist, everything's egalitarian, and the reason why black people are different is because of white oppression, and the reason why women seem to go into these things is because of patriarchal oppression, and it's repeated to you ad nauseum, I have to go, maybe I have to question some of that.
Yeah, and maybe there's room for the argument that culture influences actions to a degree, but that doesn't happen. It's not the complete influence. That's not the only thing that's going on, and you have to take into account an entire plethora of other factors. So yeah, it's not just one thing. It's not like, oh, society influenced me to get into liberal arts. Like, no, I definitely chose that based on my own abilities and talents and interests.
And that's a brave choice, because when you're in college, I remember the first time I even considered liberal arts, I was in the John. I was reaching for toilet paper, and they had scratched in liberal arts degrees right here, like below. And I was like, oh, that's a sign that they're worthless, right? But think about it. The Bachelor of Science degree is all about scientism and this whole kind of one realm look at the world. And liberal arts are about using your mind to explore literature and culture and actually express yourself. They teach us to think that if you get a degree in that, you're not going to get a good job. You have to get this other type of degree. That's another part of the college deception. Mm-hmm. Because if you learned about all this stuff, I would much rather know about the history of philosophy during my college career than all the calculus and mechanical engineering and all the other engineering classes that I used to take that I never translated into real life. I don't do that in real life. But you know what I do? I write all the time for my living. And when I was talking to my nephew, he just turned 9 the other day. I said, what's your least favorite class? He said, language arts. And I was talking to him about it. And I was like, that can actually, you might not like it now. You might not see the purpose in it. But there's a purpose for reading comprehension and reading across what's been written of the people who came before us. And I think that school artificially separates these interest areas like philosophy and history and all these other things overlap through real life, but they're like, these are different subjects. And you might never realize that those subjects actually go together in a really cool flow that you can do in your own unique way until you get older and you get, jettisoned from the official system, and you got to think about what the whole game's about.
Yeah, and it was my English professors and teachers who actually helped push me in the direction of critical thinking the most. Through dissecting literature and reading things in context and getting the bigger picture, and then also the minutia of what's being said there. So yeah, it's not completely worthless. As some people would have you believe, everyone has different talents and abilities.
Well, they don't stress the humanities at all. Did you guys have humanities courses?
No, they only had it for the smartest kids, and I wasn't in high school. I wasn't in that group. Yeah. There was a class called humanities.
I was kind of in those, kind of AP humanities classes.
It's interesting, but they don't give you enough context to actually use it. It's like you study stuff, but they're like, it's like giving kids toys without batteries. Like toys that need batteries, but they don't have batteries. That's what the public education and college is like. They're like, here's the thing, but we're not going to tell you what really powers that. Your focus, attention, your work ethic, your persistence, to know that you have a goal and that it's worthwhile getting there. And if it's worthwhile getting there, to go through whatever you got to go through to get there. Like, they totally have turned that inside out. They're making empty people out there. And those empty people are coming out of college with, buku debt. Mm-hmm. So, until next time, when you guys are probably going to do a remote show, I'll have some people here. You guys will have some people in your studio. Maybe we'll have a short list of topics to talk about for the evening, and you guys bring the value however you do.
Sounds good.
I've had a great time.
The deep end.
Thank you for helping me test the studio. I have a list of things that don't work down here that I'm going to fix, and so next time...
Whoa, we have a list like that too.
Hey, can you end it with a song? Can we play something that people like?
Oh, well, people like that's subjective.
Music through Carlos's fingers.
Ooh, I would. But
Here, I'm going to go
not
over
tune.
while you play that. I'm going to work the camera so I can get a good shot of you.
All right.
Let me sneak behind you. Thanks, sir.
Why is that so?
And that guitar hasn't been played in at least a year.
And then it's completely out of tune by the end of the song. Jesus, yeah, that went. I don't even know what the hell that sound is. I can't. Sorry, guys. That's as good as I get.